On the night of August 28, 2024, a 15-year-old girl sent a shaking text to her friend. "I don't know what my dad just did. I don't know if my mom is still alive." Just minutes before, inside a 1.1 On the night of August 28, 2024, a 15-year-old girl sent a shaking text to her friend. "I don't know what my dad just did. I don't know if my mom is still alive." Just minutes before, inside a $1.1 million home in St. James, two people, who once believed they had finally found peace after years of hurt, came face to face with a kind of darkness they never expected. On the night of August 28, 2024, a 15-year-old girl sent a shaking text to her friend. "But I don't know what my dad just did. Silence turned into gunfire. I don't know if my mom is still alive." And the one who pulled the trigger just minutes was before, the man Kelly once called her husband home in St. A 15-year-old girl sent a shaking text to her friend. "Don't forget to subscribe. I don't know what my dad just did." Silence turned into gunfire. "I don't know if my mom is still alive." And the one who pulled the trigger just minutes was the man Kelly once called her husband home in moments that look perfectly peaceful. And if you look at the last photos of Kelly and Kenny, warm smiles at a birthday party, proud eyes as their families blended into one, you would never imagine that 15-year-old girl sent shaking everything would end in the cold. "I don't know what my dad just did. I don't know if my mom and the one who pulled the trigger just minutes was the man Kelly once called her husband home come right before the biggest storm." And if you look at the last photos of Kelly and answering one question, warm smiles at a birthday party, what do you think drives a man to plan proud eyes as their families blended into one? Leave a comment. You would never imagine that 15-year-old girl sent shaking everything. Learn to smile so everything looked okay. She called the police once, but the report only said, non-criminal domestic incident. No one truly understood Mas except Kelly. She lived every day in anxiety, fear and crushing loneliness. Eventually, she realized she had two choices: stay and slowly disappear into the darkness, or leave, learn to smile face the storm head-on. Okay. She chose to call the police once. The divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Non-criminal domestic incident, blaming her for no one truly understood Mas except Kelly, accusing her of destroying his life. She lived every day in anxiety, but Kelly never looked back. Crushing loneliness. For the first time in years, the sky didn't feel so heavy. She realized she had two choices, and it was then, as if fate had been waiting, and slowly disappear into the darkness, or leave, learn to smile, face the storm head-on. Okay. She chose to call the police once. The divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Non-criminal domestic incident. He raised their two children truly understood, built a charity, accusing her of destroying every day in anxiety, but Kelly fear and crushing loneliness. For the first time in years, the sky did. She realized she had two choices, and it was then, as if fate had been waiting, slowly disappear into like two souls that or leave, learn to smile, face the storm, finding the only person who she chose to call the police once. The divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Non-criminal domestic incident. He raised their two children understood, built a charity, accusing her of destroying every day in anxiety, but Kelly fear and crushing loneliness. For the first time in years, the sky did. She realized she had two choices, and it was then, as fate had been waiting, slowly disappear into Kelly had once been a priest, learned to smile, face the storm, finding now she was she chose to call the police. Kenny's divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Non-criminal domestic violence, blaming her for one understood, built a charity, accusing her of destroying every day in anxiety, but Kelly fear and crushing loneliness. For the first time in years, the sky did. She realized she had two choices, and then, as fate had slowly disappear into Kelly had once been a priest, learned to smile, face the storm, finding now she chose to call the police. Kenny's divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Non-criminal domestic violence, blaming her for one understood, built a charity, accusing her of destroying every day in anxiety, but Kelly fear and crushing loneliness. For the first time in years, the sky did. She realized she had two choices, and then, as fate had slowly disappear into Kelly had once been a priest, learned to smile, face the storm, finding now she chose to call the police. Kenny's divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Non-criminal domestic violence, blaming her for one Deliberation, the jury returned. All 12 members agreed, guilty of premeditated murder. Judge Edward D. Lukemeyer delivered the sentence, "You crushed another human being's skull. You will spend the rest of your life behind bars, Brian McManus, and life in prison without parole." As officers handcuffed him and led him away, no one in the courtroom shed a tear. Only the photo of Miss Anne smiling softly from years ago
12 members agreed,
remained,
guilty of
a woman of light,
premeditated
gone
murder.
forever,
Judge Edward
but leaving
D.
behind a
Lukemeyer
lesson
delivered the
none would
sentence,
forget. Do you think
crushed
life in
another
prison is
human
enough for
being's
someone
skull.
like Brian? You will
Share
spend
your
the
thoughts
rest of your
below,
life behind
because in
bars.
the next part,
Brian McManus
we'll
and
hear
life
from
in
those
prison
who were
without
left
parole.
behind.
Her
As
family,
officers
her neighbors,
handcuffed him and led him away,
and the entire town
no
of
one in the
Warner
courtroom
Robins,
shed a tear.
the one still living
Only
with
the
the
photo
pain
of
that
Miss
bears
Anne
her
smiling
name
softly from
Miss
years
Anne
ago
remained,
the courtroom had
guilty of
fallen silent,
premeditated
gone
murder.
forever.
The verdict was read,
but leaving behind
the
a
killer
lesson
was led
none
away
would
in the
forget.
clinking of cold
Do you think
handcuffs.
life in prison is
But the
enough
pain
for
didn't
someone
end
like
there.
You will
Share
spend
your
the rest
thoughts
of your
below.
life behind
In the
bars.
small
Because in the
house
next
at
part,
202
we'll
Wake
hear
Forest
from those
Drive,
who were left behind.
where children's laughter
As
once filled
officers
the air,
handcuffed him and led
and
him
now
away,
only silence and emptiness remained.
The
The aftermath. In the days after the trial, Jessica Terrell, Miss Anne's granddaughter, returned to the house to pack up her grandmother's belongings. The kitchen still held a half-finished jar of cookies. On the table lay an unsent birthday card. Her scent still lingered in the air, and Jessica couldn't hold back her tears. Grandma always told me, "You must believe in the good," but it was that very goodness that made her trust the wrong man. The entire town of Warner Robins was still in shock. An elderly neighbor, Martha, said quietly, she was the sunshine of this street. Every morning she waved. Every holiday she brought cookies for everyone. None of us can believe she died at the hands of the man she called her husband. In the months that followed, the town organized memorial gatherings for Miss Anne. Flowers covered the white fence where she once grew her beloved roses. Someone placed a small sign among them. The light never goes out. Lessons from a tragedy. But the case also raised a painful question. Why are kind, gentle people so often the easiest prey for emotional predators? Experts called it the romance scam syndrome, when loneliness and the longing for companionship make older adults more likely to trust, to ignore the red flags waving right before their eyes. Miss Anne's story became the face of thousands more like hers, people who only wanted to feel loved again, never realizing they were opening their doors to danger. What haunted people most wasn't just how she died, but how kind she remained until the very end. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't lash out. She only wanted to talk, to make things right. Her compassion made people both love her and ache for her. Love her for her warmth and ache because the world can be so cruel to those who are good. Her legacy. After the trial, Jessica stood before the cameras, voice trembling. My grandmother should have been sitting on her porch watching the kids play, not lying in a cold grave. I just wish I could turn back time and tell her, Grandma, please be careful with that man. Her words brought the crowd to tears. From that day, Lucille Ann McManus became a symbol in the community. Her name led the Love But Beware campaign, raising awareness about romance scams and hidden abuse in fake relationships. Her story wasn't retold as a tragedy, but as a warning, a beacon for others. People still say, Miss Anne was killed because she believed in goodness. But the truth is, it's that very belief that keeps her memory alive, not as a victim, but as a light guiding those lost in the darkness of loneliness. If you were Miss Anne, would you still have the courage to believe in goodness after such betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments, because in the final chapter, we'll close this story with a message of hope, a reminder of love, strength, and what it truly means to seek real connection in a digital world. July 2025, the state of Georgia officially closed the case of Lucille Ann McManus, the woman of light. Her killer, Brian McManus, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. No more excuses, no more cold practiced words over a 911 call. Behind bars, he became only a shadow of himself, a lonely man, abandoned by the world, but out there, Miss Anne still lives on, in the memories of her family, in the hearts of her neighbors, and in every lesson this story has left behind. Her legacy lives on. From her tragedy, many woke up to a painful truth. Awareness campaigns for romance scams targeting seniors began spreading across Georgia. And on the white fence in front of her old home, people still lay flowers, light candles, and leave a handwritten sign that reads, Miss Anne, the woman who taught us that kindness is light, even in darkness. A final message: the ending of this story isn't just a verdict. It's a reminder: love, but don't love blindly. Trust, but never forget yourself. If someone makes you feel uneasy, listen to your intuition. It's often right before your mind dares to believe it. If Miss Anne's story touched your heart, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share this video to help protect those you care about. And don't forget to comment below. Do you believe trust can save us, or is it what makes us most vulnerable? The story ends here, but Miss Anne's light will never fade. Listen to your intuition. It's often right before your mind dares to believe it. If Miss Anne's story touched your heart, please subscribe, hit the bell. Police department, what's your emergency? Hello, hello. A man's voice answered, calm, eerily calm. I just got home. My wife, she... 3 minutes later, patrol cars arrived at 202 Wake Forest Drive. The front door was slightly open. Inside, no signs of forced entry. The bedroom was silent, but on the bed lay a woman's body, her face unrecognizable, blood soaking through the white sheets. The man who made the call? Her husband, Brian McManus, a former British police officer, and what first appeared to be a suicide, was about to uncover a chilling story of love, marriage, and murder that would shake the entire state of Georgia. This is the Green Card Murder, a true crime case about a man who once served as a protector of justice, now hiding behind the mask of evil. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. Type 0 if you found this video compelling, and follow the entire story, told through the lens of a real-life crime that's darker than fiction. When news of Lucille Ann McManus's death spread across Wake Forest Drive, no one could believe it. It can't be Anne, the neighbors said. She was always smiling, always the first to check on someone when they were sick, the last to leave a party because she insisted on helping clean up. Everyone called her Miss Anne, a 63-year-old woman with a gentle face, small frame, and a warm smile that could melt away anyone's bad day. After her husband passed, she lived with her granddaughter Jessica and 2 great-grandchildren. Each morning she made coffee, played soft music, and tended to the flowers in her yard. She believed that if you're kind to life, life will be kind to you. But life isn't always fair to the kind. A new love, and the beginning of the end, people recalled that in recent months, Anne had seemed happier than usual. She told Jessica she'd met someone special. A British gentleman, she said. Polite, attentive, always wishing me good night. Maybe he's your soulmate. Grandma, Jessica teased. Anne smiled, fingers brushing her phone, eyes glimmering. Maybe I won't have to be lonely anymore. Love in one's later years touched everyone around her. Neighbors were happy to see her smiling again. They thought she had found peace. But behind those sweet messages and late-night calls was a man who was planning every move, not out of love, but out of greed. Brian McManus, 55, claimed to be a former London police officer. He spoke with a refined accent, told stories about his lonely life in America, and his dream of finding a partner to grow old with. He knew exactly what words to use, how to sound honest, how to make a good woman believe she had finally met the right man. Within just a few weeks, they met in person, a sunny afternoon in May at a small cafe in town. Brian brought flowers, pulled out a chair for her, and told tales of chasing criminals through the streets of London. Anne laughed, eyes sparkling like a young girl in love for the first time. From that day on, he was everywhere in her life, through texts, calls, and tender words that felt like care. And just 3 months later, he proposed. I want to be with you, to protect you for the rest of my life. Really, Brian? You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Words that could bring tears to anyone's eyes. But to him, they were nothing more than tools. Every I love you was part of a plan, every smile, a step closer to his goal, a green card, and a permanent place in America. The scene looked like something out of a fairy tale. A small backyard wedding, candles glowing, neighbors offering blessings. But behind the white veil, a tragedy was already being written. And just months later, the gentleman from London would show the entire town what it means when a stranger brings darkness with him. Love that comes too fast isn't always destiny. Sometimes it's someone counting the days until they destroy you. Share your thoughts. Do you think kindness can make people blind? After the wedding, people still saw Miss Anne smiling, just as warm and gentle as ever. But there was one difference. Ever since Brian McManus moved into that little house, her smile began to fade, little by little, day by day. At first, everyone thought it was just ordinary married life. Brian still called her darling, still wrapped an arm around her in public, but behind closed doors. A woman was quietly disappearing. Her granddaughter Jessica later recalled, "I used to hear her laugh every morning, but after she married Brian, the house fell silent. One day I saw her standing on the porch, eyes red, but she still smiled when she saw me." The man who once promised to protect her had become a stranger. He began to control everything, her bank cards, phone, even social media accounts. Whenever someone called, he stood right beside her listening. He said it was for safety, but everyone knew what it really was, control. Then came the so-called business trips. Brian started disappearing for days at a time, claiming he had projects in Florida. And Anne believed him, because she wanted to believe him. But one night Brian forgot his phone at home. A message flashed across the screen. "Can't wait to see you again, baby." Anne froze. In that single moment, every promise, every tender smile, every "I love you" crumbled to dust. She didn't want to believe it. But deep down, her heart knew. He had betrayed her. The next day, she confronted him. There was a fire in her eyes no one had ever seen before. "Are you cheating on me, Brian?" "Don't be ridiculous, Anne. You're being paranoid." "Paranoid? Then what's this?" She held up the phone. Brian said nothing, then smirked. "You know, at your age, you're a little too easy to fool. She's just an old friend." That night, neighbors heard shouting and the sound of things breaking, then silence. The next morning, Anne told Jessica she planned to report the marriage to immigration authorities, to expose it as a sham marriage for a green card. Jessica remembered her words clearly. If he's been lying, he'll have to face the consequences. No one should ever use love as a weapon. But Anne didn't realize those words had just sealed her fate. From that moment on, one thought consumed Brian's mind. If she reports me, I'll lose everything. The man who once wore a police badge now began to plan a murder. He knew her habits, knew when she was alone, knew exactly which room had no cameras. The sweetness was gone. What replaced it was something colder than death itself. After that violent argument, the house at 202 Wake Forest Drive fell into an eerie silence. Miss Anne still made breakfast, still watered her flowers each afternoon, but her eyes were different now. Deep, distant, and filled with a quiet sense of dread, as if she knew a storm was coming. Brian continued to play the part of the perfect husband in front of the neighbors. He smiled, waved, took the dog for walks, chatted politely, as if nothing had happened. But behind those polite gestures, he was plotting carefully, methodically, how to erase the woman who had dared to threaten him. "She won't ruin my life," he said during a phone call with his lover in Florida. "You need to do something, Brian," the woman's voice replied. "If she reports you, you'll lose everything." "I know," he said slowly, "and I won't let that happen." Those words, colder than the metal of the gun he once carried as a cop. The preparation from then on, Brian's behavior changed. He left the house early each morning, but no one knew where he went. Sometimes he came back with mud on his shoes, claiming he'd walked the dog through the empty lot behind the neighborhood. In truth, he was rehearsing, practicing his plan to dispose of evidence. He carefully deleted his browsing history, but later, investigators would uncover the search terms he thought he'd erased. How to clean blood from carpet, how to hide a murder, can you be convicted without a body? Meanwhile, Anne tried to live as normally as she could, but the warning signs around her were growing impossible to ignore. Brian no longer spoke to her. He only gave commands. When he did smile, it was the cold, empty smile of someone who had stopped seeing the person before him as human. Jessica later recalled, "Grandma told me Brian didn't sleep in their room anymore. He moved to another room, locked the door every night. She was scared, but she didn't want to make a scene. She just said, 'I just want peace, that's all.'" The last days on, the night of November 20th, neighbors heard loud arguing. A man's voice shouted, "You dare threaten me? I gave up everything for you." Then came a loud crash, the sound of something heavy falling, and silence. The next morning, Brian left the house as if nothing had happened. 2 days later, he bought a rubber mallet at a nearby store. The receipt would later be found in his jacket pocket. It wasn't a tool for fixing things. It was a weapon. And by November 24th, Thanksgiving Day, Brian was ready. He knew exactly what he would do and when and where. He took the dog for his usual morning walk. But this time he carried a small black bag. Inside it, the object that would end the life of the woman who still believed in him. That morning, Miss Anne was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, still believing they could talk things out after the holiday. She didn't know that the man stepping out the door would soon return, not to apologize, but to kill her. He had once sworn to uphold justice. Now he was about to use the same hands that once held handcuffs to murder the woman who called him husband. November 24th, 2023, Thanksgiving morning. Golden sunlight bathed Wake Forest Drive. For most families, it was a morning of gratitude, of warmth and togetherness. But inside House 202, one man was about to turn it into a crime scene. Brian McManus woke earlier than usual. He made breakfast, kissed Miss Anne softly on the forehead, and said in a calm, gentle tone, "I'm taking the dog out for a bit. We'll have lunch together later, okay?" She smiled, not knowing it would be the last smile of her life. As he stepped outside, Brian carried a small black bag. A neighbor's camera captured him stopping by the drainage ditch, opening the bag, and testing how a few heavy objects would sink. No one knew he was rehearsing, practicing how to dispose of evidence. The plan Brian had prepared everything with chilling precision. He chose Thanksgiving Day, assuming neighbors would be too busy celebrating to hear anything unusual. He placed a rubber mallet, gloves, and an old jacket in the bathroom, where he knew Anne would go after her shower. He wiped his browser history, deleted GPS data, and set his phone to silent mode. At 8:30 a.m., Brian returned home. Anne was in the bedroom, folding the blanket, her back turned toward the door. "Brian, you're back early?" "Yeah." "I missed you," he said, his hand hidden behind his back. She turned, still smiling. Then came the sound of the first thud. The first blow stunned her. The second drew blood. And when Anne collapsed, he kept going, blow after blow, until the sound of her breathing stopped. When it was over, he stood there, staring. No emotion, no remorse. He pulled the blanket over her body, washed his hands, and began his performance, the role of a husband discovering his wife's suicide. He called 911, his voice steady and unnervingly calm. "I just got back from walking the dog, and my wife is dead. Looks like she shot herself." But there was one fatal flaw in his story. Anne didn't own a gun, the cover-up after hanging up. Brian calmly changed shirts, grabbed the dog leash, and walked back toward the drainage ditch. A security camera from across the street caught everything. Him leaning down, throwing something heavy into the water, the blood-stained rubber mallet and his smashed phone. When police arrived, Brian was standing at the door, hands in his pockets, asking coolly, "Do you need me to tell you what happened?" The investigation team stepped inside and instantly knew it wasn't suicide. No gun, no shell casings, no powder burns, only splattered blood on the walls and sheets, multiple blunt force impacts, and Miss Anne's body showing severe head trauma. The scratches on Brian's arms, the traces of blood under Anne's fingernails, they told the truth. She had fought back until her final breath. Outside, neighbors gathered, their faces pale as police sirens echoed down the street. Someone whispered, "What happened to Miss Anne?" A detective answered quietly, voice heavy, "It's not suicide, it's murder." A man who once swore to love her until death had kept his promise, but in the cruelest way imaginable. Question for you. What's more terrifying, the coldness of a killer, or the blind trust of someone who loves him until the very end? That morning, when police stepped into 202 Wake Forest Drive, they knew instantly. Brian McManus was lying. It took only minutes for the inconsistencies to emerge. A crime scene staged clumsily, yet calculated in every detail. Blood spattered sideways, not in the direction of a gunshot. No shell casings, no gun, no gunpowder residue. And on the victim's hands, scratches, broken nails, defensive wounds. She had fought for her life. "If this is suicide," Detective Carmen Thompson said dryly, "then I'm the Queen of England." Brian remained eerily calm, repeating the same rehearsed story. "I was walking the dog. When I came back, she was dead. I called 911 right away. But when officers noticed the red scratches on his forearms, the story began to crumble. Where did you get those, Brian? I don't know. Maybe from the dog leash. Short, stiff answers. And in his eyes, avoidance. Detective Thompson didn't buy it. She ordered a full forensic sweep, DNA samples from under the victim's nails, blood analysis, and a review of every nearby security camera. Within 24 hours, the puzzle began to fit together. Footage from a neighbor's camera, across the street, showed Brian leaving the house with a black bag, then returning 20 minutes later without it. Search teams followed his path to a drainage ditch about 200 meters away. When forensic divers pulled the contents from the murky water, they found a rubber mallet stained with blood and fragments of a smashed phone. Lab results confirmed it. The blood on the mallet matched Miss Ann's DNA. There was no more doubt. The weapon, the motive, and the killer perfectly aligned. Meanwhile, Brian clung to his role as the grieving husband. He sat in the interrogation room, hands clenched, eyes glistening. I didn't do anything. Someone must have broken in. Detective Thompson leaned forward. No sign of forced entry. No intruder knows how to erase footprints that well, except someone who lives here. Silence. No regret, no protest. Just a slow exhale, as if he had already accepted that this moment was inevitable. When the forensic report came back, it sealed his fate. Brian's DNA was found beneath Anne's fingernails, proof that she had fought back. And on the bed, strands of blood-stained fabric matched the shirt he wore that day. News spread quickly. The people of Georgia were stunned. How could a former cop kill his own wife? The answer came from the FBI. His phone history revealed text messages with his lover in Florida, romantic exchanges intertwined with chilling promises. It'll all be over soon. Over soon, meaning Miss Ann's death. Brian McManus was arrested on November 25, 2023, just 24 hours after the murder. As the handcuffs clicked shut, he sneered, "You'll never prove anything." But he was wrong, because every piece of evidence, the camera footage, the blood, the scratches, told the same story. The crime was real, and he was the only one there. He thought he could stage the perfect suicide. But there's no such thing as a perfect crime. Only killers arrogant enough to believe they're the smartest person in the room. July 2025, nearly 2 years after that fateful morning. The courtroom of Houston County, Georgia was packed to capacity. The press called it the Green Card Murder Trial, the most anticipated case of the year. The man sitting at the key defendant's table, Brian McManus, a former British police officer, wore a grey suit. His hands were clasped, his face expressionless, as if the tragedy being described had nothing to do with him. Prosecutor Eric Edwards began with a single sentence that silenced the entire courtroom. Today, we're not just talking about a murder. We're talking about the most horrifying kind of betrayal, when the killer is the very person the victim trusted most. On the screen behind him appeared a photo of Miss Anne, her gentle smile, her kind eyes. The room fell completely still. The evidence over 6 days of trial, the prosecution laid out the evidence, each piece cutting through Brian's facade like a blade. Surveillance footage showing him throwing the black bag into the ditch, blood on the rubber mallet matching Anne's DNA, skin cells under the victim's nails matching his, text messages with his lover proving he had planned it all. When asked, "Did you love Miss Anne, Brian?" he replied flatly, "I loved her, in my own way." The courtroom erupted in murmurs of disgust. Then Jessica, Anne's granddaughter, took the stand. Her hands trembled as she held up a photo of her grandmother. Her voice broke. "My grandma believed in the goodness of people, and that's what killed her. I just wish I'd gone over for lunch that day. Maybe she'd still be alive." Tears filled the room. Everyone wept except Brian. He sat motionless, eyes down, blank and cold. The verdict, when Judge Edward Lukemeyer asked him one final time, "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Brian lifted his head, voice chillingly calm. "I'm innocent. I'm just an unfortunate husband." Prosecutor Edwards gave a bitter smile and turned to the jury. What kind of husband crushes his wife's skull with a rubber mallet? What kind of husband hides the weapon, fakes a 911 call, and blames her family? This is not a man. This is a manipulator. and a calculated killer. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty. On July 16, 2025, Judge Lukemire pronounced the sentence: "You took the life of a woman out of pure selfishness. You will spend the rest of your life behind bars. Life imprisonment, without parole." Aftermath outside the courthouse, residents placed flowers along the white fence of Miss Ann's old home. A small sign read, "Her kindness remains the light, even in the dark." Justice had been served, but at a devastating cost. 3 generations lost their guiding light. A neighborhood lost its warmest smile, and society was left with a painful truth. Sometimes trust can become the sharpest weapon when placed in the wrong hands. The trial ended, but one question still lingers. How can love turn into murder? What do you think of the verdict? Do you believe justice was enough for Miss Ann? The case may be closed, but the memory of Miss Ann McManus still lives on in the hearts of the small community of Warner Robins. Each evening, candles flicker softly along the white fence of her old home, where fresh flowers are carefully placed beside a small card that reads, "Miss Ann, the woman of light." Her family, Jessica and the 2 children, still live there. They're learning to move forward, but never forgetting the woman who taught them what kindness truly means. Jessica founded the Ann's Light Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping elderly victims of romance scams and abusive relationships. From the loss of one woman, hundreds of lives have been saved. Through tears, Jessica said, "If Grandma were still here, she'd be smiling, because her light never went out." Brian McManus will spend the rest of his life behind bars, while the story of Miss Ann remains a powerful reminder that kindness is never wrong. But giving it to the wrong person can be fatal. And that, dear friends, is the true ending of the green card murder. A tragedy, yes, but also proof that justice always finds its way to the light. If you believe that goodness still has a place in this world, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below. Kindness, do you think it's a strength or a weakness? Because the light of Miss Ann still shines on, guiding those who continue to believe in the good. A tragedy, yes, but also proof that justice always finds its way to the light. If you believe that goodness still has a place in this world, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below. Kindness, do you think it's a strength or a weakness? Because the light of Miss Ann still shines on, guiding those who continue to believe in the good. A tragedy, yes, but also proof that justice always finds its way to the light. If you believe that goodness still has a place in this world, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave